This meeting is being recorded.
Para mí es un privilegio absoluto poder entrevistar a esta terapeuta financiera, Bari Tessler. Yo leí su libro hace un tiempo y la verdad que quedé fascinado. Es totalmente diferente a lo que puedes encontrar de finanzas personales ahí en el mercado. Lamentablemente todavía no está en español, pero esta entrevista va a ayudar a que su mensaje pueda salir al mercado latino. Y ella es terapeuta financiera, es autora y es creadora de la escuela El Arte del Dinero, que es un programa de mentoría de un año completo. Entonces aquí vamos a estar conversando sobre lo que típicamente no se habla en finanzas y que te puede ayudar a llevar una vida en prosperidad y hacia la libertad financiera. O sea que gracias, Bari, por estar aquí con nosotros. Y ahora cambio el idioma a inglés para poder conversar con ella. So Bari, thank you very much. I just did a little bit of an introduction to you in Spanish.
I understood every 10th word. Yeah.
So it's an honor, it's a privilege. You definitely. I like when I saw the first time right now to you in Zoom. You look exactly like in the pictures, in the book, in social media. So it's amazing that you are an authentic person. So I think we're going to have an authentic conversation.
Yes, that's very important to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of, I mean, like I told you before, I'm in the personal development industry and wellness industry, and we see a lot of financial advisors, financial planners, financial coaches, but we don't get to see a lot of financial therapists. This is like something new, and I would like for us and for my community to for you to explain what is exactly a financial therapist.
Okay. So I have to share a little bit of my story to say what a financial therapist is, right?
Great.
Because I've been a financial therapist for 22 years. So in
Wow.
2001 is when I started my financial therapy work. Okay. 6 or 7 years later, there's now, a financial therapy association started. I'm not under their umbrella because I was doing this work before this whole organization was created, but I refer to them, right? But I'm trained as a therapist, as a somatic therapist. So somatic being body, mind therapist. I'm, when I'm working with someone, I'm watching their gestures, their facial expressions, what's going on in their body. And I'm lovingly supporting them to also notice, what did you just notice there? What's going on in your shoulders? Where's your breath in your body, right? So before 22 years ago, I'm in my 50s now. At the age of 24, I started graduate school and I did the somatic psychotherapy program from Naropa University, which is in Boulder, Colorado in the States. And it's where I live again. So that's where I'm living right now. So I spent my 20s training to be a therapist, doing my own work. They require you to do your own work and be your own case study. You have to be in individual therapy. You have to be in group therapy. You have to do your own work. It's not easy. And my favorite topics during that time were sexuality, body, food, grief, death, intimacy, relationships, right? That's what I thought I'd be working on. And I just never knew it'd be through the lens of money. And so after spending my 20s doing my internships, working in the mental health field, working in hospice, doing grief and bereavement work, leading authentic movement groups for young women, then my school loan came due. And that freaked me out. And I just realized, wait a second, while I was training to be a therapist, we never talked about money. That's insane. That's crazy. How was that left out of our training? So we didn't learn how to understand our own money emotions. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And not to, how do I say this? And not to mention, how did they live that out in school and in college?
Yeah, exactly. We can go way back. We can, right. Exactly. I always say we did not receive a financial education from grade school on up. But so we didn't receive financial literacy, but we also didn't receive an emotional literacy education, right? In grade school, high school, any schooling. So that's the piece I was learning in graduate school, the emotional literacy, right? Somatic tools, how to be in the body, how to support others, but nothing about financial literacy, right? Money emotions, money stories, how to start a private practice, how to set the fees, create a business model, do the bookkeeping. So long story short, all of that led me to, the freak out moment when my student loan became due. And that was the moment where I realized I'm either going to go running away and never deal with this, or I'm going to face it like every other big topic in my life. And I decide step one is to learn bookkeeping, because I was terrified. I was throwing away my bank statements. I wasn't looking at my numbers. What do you do with these bank statements? And so step one was to learn bookkeeping. And it was incredibly surprising and empowering to do bookkeeping. I wasn't good at math growing up. I never thought I could do bookkeeping. Bookkeeping has nothing to do with math, right? Like bookkeeping systems add everything up for you and show you and, spit out reports and all of that. So that was the first thing I did. And that was when I was 28 to 32 years old. And so I also started a bookkeeping practice. So when I learned it, then I started doing bookkeeping for other therapists. And they had no idea I had a master's degree. They just threw their bookkeeping at me. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I always say I learned so much about people's relationship to money, earning, spending, their values. It was an incredible education. And then that's when at 32, I one day decided it was time to integrate all of my past training as a therapist with all of these money management tools that I was falling in love with. So this is when, I put it all up on big white paper in this tiny little cabin that my husband and I were living in California at the time. And he sees what I'm doing. I came up with the 3 phases. So now it's money healing, money practices, money maps. It's what I teach in my books and my programs. And I put that all up. And he said, "You're doing financial therapy." Now, not in that moment, but quickly I went online. I said, "Who's doing financial therapy?" No one was doing it. There was one person in Canada who was a bookkeeper using that term. And I just thought, wow, like, holy cow, like something's going on here. And so my version of financial therapy, which is slightly different than Financial Therapy Association, right? They were financial planners mostly who wanted to learn money psychology skills.
Okay.
A lot of financial planners, they were all certified, and they were sitting down with clients, and guess what? They realized that they needed to be therapists or have some therapy skills or have a therapist in the room. One of my very first colleagues, Rick Kaler, him and I collaborate a lot. He was part of the Financial Therapy Association board. He's a financial planner. He was one of the first financial planners that I met that was bringing therapists into the meetings back a long time ago, right? So my work, so they're more financial planners who wanted to learn money psychology skills. Okay. I come from a psychotherapy background, right? Who then had to learn financial literacy and a lot of the practical money tools that weren't taught in school, right? Weren't taught in my graduate program, and put them all together. So financial therapy, my version of financial therapy is, teaching people a foundation and that they can repeat and come back to year after year. It's helping them look at their relationship to money on a practical, emotional, psychological, even spiritual level. It's giving them tons of tools and practices to support them when, money goes up and down. Years ago, I was like, well, there's ebbs and flows in life, and there's ebbs and flows in money. And that was a really important realization for myself, for my clients, my community, right? No matter how much we plan, and I like planning, right? And I love bookkeeping, right? But there's going to be curveballs. Life's going to happen as well. So it's really understanding who we are in this relationship. What are the stories that we've told that are working, not working? And lots of practical money tools. And I'll stop there for now.
Okay. Yes. Let me ask some questions.
Yes.
Yes. So it's it's amazing journey, and I might not want to get like too much into this, but I saw some information about the Financial Therapy Association, and I was a little bit sad because it's like if you are not from the US, you cannot receive help from from financial therapists in the association. And I was like, oh my God, so many people need financial therapy and we cannot get help. But with you, with your books, it seems like we can actually get helped with your method, with your books, with your methodology, and we can actually achieve financial freedom, if we may say that.
You know, everyone has a different word. Some people it's hard to just use, there's many adjectives. Like for some people, they want financial freedom. For some people, they want financial savvy or confidence, or they want to feel empowered in this area. You know, I mean, there's so many different words that we can put to this. But number one, and everyone needs to decide that, you know, it was like, how do you create a method that helps people become more savvy and confident and empowered and creative around money? That was, you know, those were some of mine. There's more. But so for me, you know, financial therapy, well, therapy is expensive, right? So that can hinder folks. Like if to pay for therapy is expensive, financial therapists are typically even more expensive, right? So for me, that's why I've been teaching in groups from day one, because it was more affordable and it was more accessible. So that's also a little difference. Is I love doing private sessions, and you know, I do one private session, a one-off, where people can just sign up for one session with me, and then I send them to my financial coaches or bookkeepers or financial planners, right? I love my colleagues. We all have different specialties, and when they arrive at the door of a bookkeeper, financial planner, they're a lot more ready, right? A financial planner is going to invest or give you, you know, a budget, a plan. It's really hard to stick to it if, you know, 90% of our money decisions are based on our emotions, right? We have to understand what those emotions are. So just to complete this, I love teaching in groups because people from all over the world can join. And I've always had people from all over the world. You know, as soon as I went online, right, then people from everywhere. And I get people from all over the world who join my year-long program for lay folks or my mentor program, right, for therapists and professionals. And it's, you know, my year-long program, it's just more reasonably priced, so more people can do financial therapy and get the support. But I also give lots of free stuff as well for people that can't do that, right? So I'm always looking at how do I meet a lot of people at different income levels and support them. It's so important.
And where are they at? Thank you very much for that. And you know, you like when I started reading your book, like you had me at hello, because there was like you talk about so many authors that I've read, and I haven't found like an answer, because they only talk about the practicalities of money, and you say there's a lot more than the budgets and the tracking and the and what is usually meant doing in the financial world. So I would like for you to tell us what is the missing link that is not being talked about in what we currently see in the social media, online, and other books.
Yeah. And also when I first started looking around 25 years ago, the only book there are two books I loved, Money and the Meaning of Life by Jacob Needleman, who is a philosopher, you know, and then Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez, because they talked about your values. Everything else that I was reading was, here's how you pay down debt, you know, here's how you invest. Now, that's all, here's how you live within your means. That's all important information, right? It's important to me to merge financial literacy with emotional literacy. And a lot of my folks need to know those practical things, but they're not going to hear it from someone who's doing it in a shaming type of, there is only one way and right way with money. Now, I'm not totally opposed to tough love. My husband would say I can be pretty, you know, fiery in the house, in the household, right? Or my friends know me. But with my work, I just knew that for the most part, tough love was not the answer, and guess what? There's not one way, there's not right way, there's not only never have debt, like Dave Ramsey says. Well, he says that because he filed a bankruptcy and he, went into a lot of debt, and that was very hard for him. And so then he made this declaration, no debt ever. And I'm more in the middle. It depends on how it's used.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, go ahead.
And I think also it's a tough job for people who are spreading the message, because since it depends a lot, maybe it's like you need to take a side or play a side when you're giving some advice, because if not, people are going to still be confused. So I don't know if Dave Ramsey actually has some debt or whatever, but I know it's not the only way. It depends.
Exactly. Right. He doesn't anymore. This was in the housing crash and years ago, right? But right. And I'm like the opposite of Dave Ramsey, right? I'm the opposite. So I guess
I'm good. I'm glad to be talking to you then.
So that's my stance, but I don't want to be only defining myself in opposition to what he is or not. So for me, it was also a lot of my community at the beginning, and it's changed, but was folks that were more creative or more intuitive and, knew that they were smart in many ways, even high earners. I've had women who come to me who were high earners, but they were still overspending. They were still not looking at their numbers. They were still not allowing themselves to get people on their financial support team, right? And I'm going to jump, but one of the chapters in my book, as you know, is who are the players on your financial support team? It's a very practical thing, but I didn't know when I was starting out, what's the difference between a bookkeeper, an accountant, and a financial planner? And so I list out all the differences, but it also depends on their background, their experience, their training, their personality, their style, their worldview. And then I list lots of questions to ask when hiring them. And I love supporting people to get a new person on their team. We need support. These are specialties. That we don't need to all be doing it on our own. But for me to go back,
I think that's a great insight, because sometimes you think you have to be doing it all on your own, and you waste so much time of your life trying to figure it out, when maybe one conversation with one person can lift everything up for you.
Yes. Or unshame some of the stuff, So a lot of people come to me with big money emotions, and shame is number one, right? Meaning I'm not okay. Everyone else learned about money except for me. I'm stupid in this area. Or, more of a reality, I've developed myself in every other area of life except for this, which is true for a lot of folks.
Mm-hmm.
And right, so that people come to me at that. So I just knew I needed a more gentle, compassionate, loving approach, and I needed to make it more meaningful and more playful and creative. So from day one, all the practices and rituals that I was learning in graduate school, I'd gone to I went to public school, then I went to a traditional university, and my graduate school was pretty out there, meaning they did experiential learning. They integrated Eastern and Western teachings. It was a Buddhist-based school. I'm not Buddhist, but I loved the learning style. Mm-hmm. And it was so incredibly creative. And there were so many rituals that I knew I had to bring all of them into my teachings around money, right? And everything from, have a money date ritual, light your candles, eat your chocolate, or whatever your version is, make it fun or at least calming, or put on music that's going to help you. Because for so many of us, sitting down to pay our bills or sending out invoices or making the phone call to the financial planner can be scary, or we can shut down, or we can go into fight, flight, freeze, or there's all sorts of things. So I have so many rituals, as you know, or, practices, you can call them practices, that are in my books. Yeah. So that's another thing that from day one, I just knew the only way I'm having a relationship with money is if I can bring all of the deeper meaning and tools and practices that I've been living in every area of my life to this as well. And, you know, my community loves them. They're really helpful, and they help us unshame, and they help calm us down, and they help us, you know, just be a lot more loving, you know, to ourselves around this area of life.
Yes, amazing. So it brings me exactly to my next question. Like in the 90s, maybe the early 2000s, we used to live in this hustle mentality. And I have a mentor that says, toughen the F up, buttercup. And in this conversation and in your book, you mentioned the word gentle and gentleness so many times. Why is being gentle to yourself and to your relationship with money makes it work so much better than just to toughen the F up and hustle about it?
Well, so, you know, I'm part in the therapy world and part in the coaching world and part in the online business world. So there were definitely times where, as a business owner, I hustled, or, you know, I was doing a lot of networking, or right. So there were times before I had my son where I think I was hustling more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in a long life, if we get one, again, there's going to be phases, ups and downs, ebbs and flows. And for me, you know, one of them was when I had my son. I gave birth to him right before my 40th birthday. So I'm an older mom. And I always say in any journey, there's going to be beautiful, easeful moments, hopefully. And there's always going to be challenging moments, right? They're just, most of the people I know, that's life, right? And so with my son, conceived him easily, pregnancy was really well, and then we got our challenge in labor and in the birth. So it all turned out fine, but there was a big complication, and I tell the story, right, in my book. So what happened in that moment was that I thought I was just going to hustle, you know, like give birth and just continue on my way, working as many hours as I could, like I did in my 30s, because I had the energy, because I wanted to, and I wanted to keep growing. And after my son came and we had to recover, then I got a huge life lesson. Like, hey, I can't hustle, and I don't want to. I want to be with my son as much as possible, right? And I need to recover. So then I started asking a new series of questions during that time that I never would have asked before, right? Which is, okay, well, how many hours can I work now while recovering? That's really realistic and honoring of my health and me wanting to be mom, you know? And what can I do that I love, that I do well? Like, what income stream can I do? Because I got 10 hours. That's it. And what can I do? I realized I can
10 hours a week. 10 hours a
10
week.
hours a week.
Okay.
And before that was 40, 50, you know, whatever I could, you know, whatever
10
I
hours
wanted.
a day.
10
You
hours a
went
day,
from,
exactly. So, you know, I mean, I always do, like, all my life, I'm always trying to integrate time, energy, money, family, and health.
Okay.
So, you know, one of the reasons I knew I couldn't work for anyone ever, because I had to make my own hours. You know, if I wanted to, I don't know, go for a hike during the day or watch a movie, you know, some Netflix. And then at night, I would pull out my work, or the weekends. Like it just, I wanted to make my own flow, right?
Okay.
So I'm jumping. Let me come back. So what can I do in 10 hours a week? And what do I love to do? What do I love that will bring in a nice income during this time? And it was my group programs, right? So I decided I could do 2 group programs with 50 people in it that year. And that was it. And I took a dip in income. I decided to also let go of my whole team. Now, anyone from the outside would have been like, what are you doing? But that was the right decision at the time, based on time, energy, money, family, and health. And I didn't know what my decisions would be until I actually got to the other side of my son's birth and was a new mom and all of that, right? So I think I just want to say that for me, I love years of growth. But again, in a long life, from what I've seen and experienced, there are some years we're growing and making more and saving more and giving more. And then there's some years we're more in maintenance. Then there's some years we're dipping. Like it's not, I took a dip during the pandemic. My husband's work went up,
Okay.
right? There's just things that happen internally. And then guess what? Things that sometimes happen in the economy or in the larger world, right? So to come back to this gentleness, I will continue to come back to gentleness for myself when I'm making money decisions. And afterwards, I do a debriefing. How did that go? What did I learn? What would I do differently? What would I do better? Right? Or, hey, I think, I'm looking at a financial mistake from my past and it doesn't feel so good. Right? So how can I go back to that younger self and add some gentleness and understanding to who we were at that time and when we made that decision, and learn more about like, oh, it makes sense to me. That there are things I didn't know, or I couldn't stand up for myself, or right, I wasn't ready for that to price things at that level, or right, there's so many things. So gentleness can be brought to so many different points. It's literally when we make money decisions, when we're looking at past so-called money mistakes, which we all have, would have done things differently, or even in how we're setting up our business model, right? To what services we can offer, how much energy we have, what type of year is really going on. So I know I answered that in kind of a larger way, and that's how I, that's how I answer.
Very, very holistic and very integral. Thank you very much. And now that you said like you went from 10 hours a day to 10 hours a week, and I'm in the coaching industry, and also there's like so many people selling so many, you can achieve your dreams that much easily. Could you actually build a business model where you work less and produce a lot more?
So that's a great question. Again, I've been at this for 22 years, right?
Yeah.
So, and so for me, when I took that dip in hours, I made less. But 3 years later, when my son turned 3, my son's 14 now. Okay. So I have a teenager and high schooler. And so when he turned 3, he was sleeping. We were sleeping. And then suddenly I was getting new ideas, and I was ready. And so then I asked new questions. I like to ask questions, right? New questions. That's one of my things. So here it was, okay, now how can I offer my work where it's more accessible to more people? Like, how can I get my program out to more people? How can I be really generous with my content? Do I need to lower my price point? That goes against everything in the coaching world, right? Sometimes I've raised my price point, sometimes I've lowered it. My private fee, I raise. My group program for my year long, I was doing groups 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months. So when I finally was asking this question, like, how can I lower the price point overall and do a year long so it's more generous, right, with the content? I wound up going from pulling teeth that year to getting 50 people in to getting 320 people in that first year of my year-long program. So each year after that 10 hours, as my son aged, I, increased it to 15 hours, increased it to 20 hours, right? I've never gone back to the amount of hours that I was working in my 30s before my son. So, but I learned how to do a little leverage moment, and lower my pricing a bit. I was doing more mid-price point, and so that it's more accessible to more people, and then brought in a lot more people, and then my revenue went up, So and then that business model lasted 7 years. Now, I wish I could tap into a business model that lasts forever, but I haven't found that yet. And it lasted for 7 or 8 years. It was incredible. And then the pandemic happened, and And I did have lower launches that year.
Okay.
And have had to, and I've just been adjusting since then. So for me, I grew up definitely with a father who was like, work hard. That was, he was an entrepreneur, but he definitely had me, getting jobs at 15 and having to work. And so that I learned what a good work ethic is, and work hard.
And driving around a Mustang, so you know what a sports car feels like.
Yes, that's in the book. Yes, a black
Yes,
Mustang. That was a pretty cool car for a
exactly.
teenager in Chicago. It was.
Yeah.
And then my father, that was one of my father's dream cars. And so he got it as an extra car, and that was my car. Yeah.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Yeah. He was very generous. And he also had a lot of conditions as well, But to go back is, I think that I have been able to crack this nut, at different points and my, my 22 years. But it's similar to, I look at it as like health. We don't get to one weight and then we plug it in and we're done. And our health doesn't get to one point and we plug it in and we're done. We have to constantly work at our health.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's part of also the growth that life always is asking us to grow. So we have to change the business model. We have to update it. We have to do something new.
Yep. Yeah. And for me, the pandemic gave me a little dip, and then I was starting to adjust that and course correct. And then the Apple iOS changes affected Facebook ads. And, I know I'm not the only one. Obviously, there's many of us that I went from getting a 5-time return on my Facebook ads to, barely breaking even to I'm not even breaking even. And I stopped doing them. I just stopped doing Facebook ads. And I know that a lot of people who are doing Facebook ads, that was
the same situation.
Yes, thank you.
It's super nice to talk to you because you have the money side and you also have the coaching and entrepreneur side. And we certify coaches here in the Dominican Republic. And there's a mistake, at least as I see it, like I have to value myself. So my price points have to be high, or I cannot give a free session because I'm not valuing myself. And I think it's against all marketing strategy to actually do that, because sometimes you have a lesser price point, like in your case, you had a lot more people and then your revenue was upgraded, for lack of a better word in English. How can we balance like our self-worth and the prices we actually put on our products?
That's such a great question. And in the coaching world, there's a lot of things that we say, like always raise your prices, your net worth equals your self-worth. I hate all of that.
Exactly.
So, okay, I do. And so, okay, number one, our self-worth and worth has nothing to do with the dollar amounts that's in our bank accounts. Our worth, our self-worth is simply by being born a unique human, period, right? Just being our unique selves. That's our value. That's our worth, right? Alongside of that, we live in capitalist cultures, or not all of us, but many of us, right? Within that, or the coaching world is certainly like it's a business, right? So there's honorable ways to do business. There's awful ways to do business. And we have to learn how to price things, and we have to create business models, right? So you saw how I did that thing of, I charged less. I mean, overall, for the year long, it was more, but compared to what I was charging for a 3-month program in the past, it wasn't that much more, and you were getting a whole year, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So give me a second here. So here's the thing. There are a lot of exercises and tools that I give people when they're wanting to know their value, claim their value, step into their value more. And for me, it's not necessarily like you feel it all the time. I know my value, it's a state, it's something that you're working on cultivating incrementally. So I like to make incremental steps, changes, and then I like that one big leap, like I had that one year, right? So many years ago, and I'm ready for another one, right? So I like all these small increments. Other people are like quantum leapers. They're doing big leaps all the time. They're folks who are gonna have bankruptcies and then start again and go back to the big numbers, and that's not me, right? I like to work on my self-worth, value, knowing it every day, every week. I'm fine-tuning, working on things. It's, again, not something you arrive at and then it's done, right? But I'll tell you a little story. So I have been, and I help people separate this out. Like, we are not our numbers. And at the same time, we can have goals, we can have budgets, we can have money maps, but we need to know who we are, right? I've never wanted $1 million business. I've wanted to have a really comfortable multiple six-figure business, right?
Okay.
And that's what I've been wanting to do. And I've had, different health challenges, both from the recovery of my son and then menopause kicked my butt.
Okay.
So any of the women or, anyone who has a woman in their life, this is an amazing time. It's a really challenging time.
Yeah.
And I was, home doing a lot of my work, in bed sometimes, not teaching in bed. I always come up to my office. We live in a very tall townhome, so I'm in the top floor with great views.
Okay.
But so that's that's my definition or balance of time, money, energy, family, and health. Okay. I'll say one last thing. I recently, for my mentor program that I started last year, right? So I've always done my year-long program for lay folks, but I always get professionals in that, taking that program to learn the foundation. I've been asked for years to do a mentor program just for therapists, coaches, financial folks. I finally did it last year, my first one. I'm on the second round. I'll do another third one. It's a 4-month program. I love it. Now, the first time I opened it up, my goal was 20 because I wanted a really small, intimate group, right? We got 40 people.
Wow.
Okay. So the second time I opened it, I was like, oh, well, my goal is 20, but we'll get 40, right? We wound up getting 17. Now,
Okay.
I learned a lot of things. I knew right away getting more or less wasn't about my value or my self-worth.
Okay.
It wasn't.
Wow.
Okay. I have done enough work to be able to separate myself out, Yeah, I wanted the more income, but one, I learned I like the smaller group. It's more intimate, where I'm getting to know everyone in it, right? So I am raising the price point a little bit, because if it's going to be smaller, then right, we have to try to hit the numbers in another way.
Mhm.
But I also just could look at other things like, hey, I haven't done some outreach marketing in a while, like things that I was kind of coasting on, the marketing I was doing. And so this is a result of that. So one of the things I did was I put up a little Instagram image saying, hey, does anyone want to interview me on their podcast? And we'll talk all things financial therapy. And that one post, I got 17 interviews.
Wow.
17. Okay. Now my team was setting up a whole list of people to reach out to and do cold calling and emailing. And I don't enjoy that, and it's pulling teeth. And this was such a more aligned, way to do outreach marketing.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to get back to is that I realized that, yeah, that extra income, that would have been nice. I want to hit that goal next time in a different way. But I also knew that it was about, where I'm at in my business right now, the shifts in the economy,
Mhm.
and some marketing things that I hadn't been paying attention to in a while. But I knew it wasn't about me. Where back in the day I would have been like, that's it, I'm done. So years ago I'd been like, I'm done. my work is not important or significant, or no, this is just ups and downs of any business owner at any level.
And paying attention to definitely to the market.
Yes.
And maybe
Yeah,
to little things that you haven't been paying attention to. I remember back in 2020 when the pandemic started, we did our first coaching certification online, and it was like with no clear strategy. We just did it, we just launched it, and we had so many people. We had 100 people in that coaching certification. And after that, we actually, the person who I represent actually took a mentorship, a high value mentorship with the Latin American owner of the product launch formula, you know, the Jeff Walker.
of course I know. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And after he took that mentorship, things got mixed up because the market got way too confusing. So it's not lack of a launch strategy, it's not lack of marketing, it's not lack of your own value, it's just things got way too different. And then of course correct, like you said, and then we got back again.
We have to constantly adjust and tweak. That's why for me, I think the fact that I had 7 years of pretty steady income, it was amazing. You know, I remember it was my 50th birthday. I was sharing it with a friend and we were like, this is really amazing. And then, you know, the next year is when pandemic happened and other things in the economy, right? That are requiring us all to not course correct. I mean, course adjust, you know, to new things in online marketing, to, you know, most of the people that I know that did launch a program in January made half their sales in my world from, you know, all different fields, not 90%, right? So there's things that are changing and we need to figure out new ways to do our work in a way that feels good. Yeah, for us. Yeah.
Definitely. And talking more obviously about like personal finances, I saw some statistics like I think 72% of people actually have a lot of financial stress, and there's people that there's been in deep in debt for maybe the whole adult life. Is there something like addiction to debt? Is there something like how can we actually get out of that?
Great. Yeah. So, okay. One thing we need to talk about is, you know, the macro side of this, right? So a lot of my work is the micro, looking at your relationship to money personally, as a couple, as a family, your work in the world, right? And and bringing that to your community, right? And then there's the macro side, which is what are the systems that we're living in? And are they equal? And how they were set, and how are they set up? And who benefits? And so for years, I've been doing interviews with folks, you know, who are economists or financial planners or so many different people in the field that, you know, one woman, a financial planner, came up with social justice investing. And that's her thing in San Francisco. And I do a lot of interviews about the macro side because it's not something my brain can understand. So I go to people, you know, that's where they come from and that's what they speak and that's what they know, right? So that's the macro side. So, you know, while I work with folks from around the world, you know, are those stats in the US or are those stats, you know, those are US stats. I don't know. They're probably elsewhere as well.
Yeah.
But
we usually we don't have access to Dominican Republic stats. So when we try to investigate something, usually what comes up, it's US statistics.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the US, our healthcare system is terrible and sad. And, you know, my family pays $1,200 a month for nothing, like for nothing. We have a smaller group of doctors that we pay a little less than $300 to a month, and we see them and they help us, but everything else is, everything's out of pocket, everything.
Wow.
So in the US, we have to pay for university. We have to pay for healthcare. Everyone says we're one paycheck away, but it's really one health issue, one medical issue away, from the total despair, So, okay, that's hard. Like, that's a hard system. I have a friend in Canada who's a business owner, and he was like, I understand why all US people are so caught up in how much they have to make, and they have to make more, we have to make more than, let's say, folks in Canada or folks in other places, right? So I just want to point out the reality. I'm not saying we don't have an addiction to debt or overspending, consumer debt, because some people do, right? Some people do, or some people don't know how to think about the future or plan for the future. That used to be me, right? My financial planner friends all think about the future. They're amazing at budgeting and planning. And I had such a hard time thinking about the future, right? So growing up in my little family, I was considered more the spender just because I like things, my siblings were savers. And then at some point I had to learn I could be both a spender and a saver. I could learn how to save. My husband and son call me a squirrel. Like, I'm the squirrel, the one tucking away, things for taxes. And, so as a business owner in the US, you pay for healthcare, you pay for school, you pay for, all the taxes, it's like you have to do, it's hard, right? It is hard. Now, yes, people have huge addictions, right? Credit cards are made easily available to us, and they can be misused, right? They can be misused. Now, I've used a 0% credit card over the years in really intentional ways, right? Where I have a plan and we got a year. I'm going to use this to make an investment, and then I'm going to be done paying it off and there'll be no interest, right? So some people can use credit in healthy ways for something. But yeah, many people do not know how to use them in an unhealthy way and then get into trouble, right? So then we can talk about, like, what is addictive spending, right? And how do we unravel something like that? So as a financial therapist, when I'm working with someone, I can do that in a few different ways. Number one is that I am trying to give people tools of mindfulness so that they can start watching their patterns and their behaviors and their habits. So my first tool is a body check-in, right? So that's the first somatic tool I bring. When people say, what's the first tool out of your entire methodology? Is it learn a bookkeeping system? I say, no, that's great. But number one is body check-in. So slowing down to ask yourself, what am I noticing in my body on a physical level, sensation level? What are the emotions? Where's my breathing in my body, right? And then I always like to finish a body check-in with what is one little adjustment that I can make so that I feel okayness in my body, okay? And I'm fine going longer if you need, okay? So
yes, thank you. I was thinking that right now. Amazing. Thank you so much.
I got you. Okay.
Yes.
So I need, see, that's that I have to pay attention, right? I have to, okay. So I was tracking that thought of yours. Right? So what is one little adjustment that we can make to help us feel okayness in our body? Loosening our jaw, little shoulder shimmy, seeing if we can get a breath a little deeper, right? Now, it doesn't mean you do a body check and you're done. You got your emotions all figured out, you're done. It's a practice. And it's a practice to do before you're going to have a money conversation, during a money conversation, or after it as a debriefing, or when you're going to go make a money purchase. You're going to go online shopping, right? So you go online, you do a little body check-in, right? what's going on in my body. Then I also ask questions that it's called the HALT method, right? It was in the book too, from the 12-step programs. Am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I tired? Am I thirsty? What's going on, right? Because we make all sorts of shopping decisions when we're hungry, when we're tired, when we're thirsty, right?
Exactly.
So ask yourself a set of questions in the moment.
Let me grab
And
some water.
have some water. I'll have more tools. When you're going online shopping, body check-in. When you're going online shopping, ask yourself some questions. Do I already have one in my closet? Do I really want it? Do I need it? Do I really want it? You know, what's going on? What is this reminding me of, right? Can I give myself an hour pause or even give myself 24 hours before I make a decision here? Because sometimes just time, you know, we add in a little time, we come back the next day and we're like, oh, I'm not hungry and tired and thirsty and whatever anymore. And I'm not going to get this, right? So, you know, that's one little piece, is starting to bring more awareness to these money moments when you're making money choices, when you're going to overspend, and bringing a set of questions to ask yourself. So I have questions to ask myself in small moments like that, bigger moments when I'm in the car dealership. You know, you have to know your numbers. So that's where all my 3 phases build upon each other. I don't know if it's a number 1 question, but it's a big question when people come to me. They're like, I don't even know what I can afford. So I don't even know if I can take your class, right? And so I say, at the end, you will know. You will know what your numbers are. You will know what your values are. You then can start to learn how to make good money decisions based on numbers, values, what phase of life you're in, what are your priorities now, right? What are you going for? And then whenever you make a choice, like the story I tell in my book about buying an electric car, my husband got the electric car, our first one. I haven't been to a gas station in 9 years. So we've had 3 electric cars, one because they were hit. And so right? So I love it. But that decision was, one, do we have the cash flow for this? And we had a money date in the car dealership asking these questions. Do we have the cash flow for this? Yes. Is this choice in alignment with our values? Yes, it's an electric car, right? Is this choice going to affect our larger term goal, which was buying a home? This was, years ago. We bought a home 7 years ago. And no, it's not going to affect it. So we had our set of questions, and we made up some on the spot. We made the best choice that we can make. And then afterwards, we did a debriefing. Did I overspend? Was I fine? How was that decision? Was it a good choice? So I am bringing and teaching people mindfulness in all these different moments, right? Teaching them how to see what their patterns and habits are and to unravel them. So if we're making mistakes or we're making not great choices or decisions, it's an incremental stepping out of those old patterns, right? And doing new things. And so, yes, I work with people all the time that put their credit cards away, cut them up, throw them away, stop using them, or freeze them. I don't know where that ever came to. I don't know where that idea came to be, but some people still do that. But you need credit in the world, and at least in the US, to be able to, do anything financially, rent a home, buy a home, get a car, right? So you need to have some credit, and you need to have good credit. So that's just a little bit, and that's not the only thing that people come to. And people come to me for all sorts of things. But yeah, in the US, people are working with debt. And this is the future thing, or the past, present, future. When you go into debt, then you're dealing with the past, right? Yeah. And so I really try to get people to realize, like, if you do that, then you're now paying into past stuff, right? Which will affect your present. And you really need to be thinking about future as well, right? Now, again, I'm not never debt. If you can use it wisely, right? With a clear intention, and be able to pay it back with no finance charges or very little, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's great. And like I said, I come from a lot in the personal development industry, and I see a lot of people that are reading the books, doing the courses, going to events, but like sometimes something is missing in order for them to really take action. In your experience, what has been like the pivotal moment where people actually do what they say they're gonna do, and with the knowledge they just gained? I don't know if you understand my question.
Oh, I totally understand your question. I would say a few things. One is that I could never be like a traditional coach, and I could never be a procrastination coach or resist people who have resistant coach. Like, I mean, we all have all of that, right? We all have flavors of all of that. But I would be a terrible coach, like, for that.
Okay.
Okay, so, and I'm not necessarily, my folks are in my lay program, it's moms, it's teachers, it's, it's all different sorts of folks, right? And then in my mentor program, it's mostly therapists, psychotherapists, social workers, bookkeepers, accountants, financial planners. There's some healers in there and some coaches, right?
Mhm.
So this is what I am going to say. I think that not everyone has it in them to be their own business owner.
Okay.
Okay. I say that with love, right? So,
Okay.
meaning there's nothing wrong with having a job. How about that? There's nothing wrong with having a job. I don't want to turn people away for people if this is a dream, but I'm just, so
Actually, that was actually one of my questions. Like, are there people meant to thrive with jobs, or people meant to thrive as entrepreneurs?
well, my husband's a little of both. So I don't think it's totally like black and white, right?
Okay. Okay.
I've watched my husband have his own businesses, at times be a freelancer, right? And at times he's gotten jobs.
Okay.
And the few jobs he's had when he worked for a large company, it was a pretty amazing. It was a unique position, One was like working for a 3D tech company in California, and they went surfing every day for lunch. Okay, so I mean, it was right, that was like, so,
Yeah.
but he was working long hours, right? And in different phases, more now, health stuff, other things. We both work from home, right? And he does his own freelancing stuff, but he's been consulting for a green energy company now. So he kind of jumps all around and gets bored and needs to do different things. And he is good at being a consultant, um, and but not necessarily being an entrepreneur, like to grow a whole larger business with people underneath him. He's a really good consultant, right? Like one man show. So he's kind of both. Where me, I am, as I already said, like, I cannot work for anyone, period. But then there's different levels of, I'm a business owner, but lately I've been saying I'm not an entrepreneur. And I think for a while I called myself a creative entrepreneur, but I'm like, you know what? I don't have those large goals where I want to see a bit larger team. I love my small team. I energetically, this is what works for me. I know that. So I don't know if we're answering your original question, but I think that there are some people that can go from 0 to 6 figures. I think it's rare. I think for some it takes time. I mean, my husband was able to do that, one, because we had my list, and so people found him from that. But I think it just takes a long time, to set up a business. And
Mhm.
people are at all different levels of being good at their work and also being able to set up a business and teaching platforms, or getting a team to do that and doing the marketing. There's just so many steps. So are you bootstrapping? Do you, have you saved a lot of money? Do you have family money? Like, those are 3 different scenarios, and there's probably more. And
Yeah.
it can look really different for the person starting a business based on those 3 things. And I just made that up, but there's probably more, right?
Yes. It makes sense to study your background and to see what your risk level is at this
Yes.
point of life. It's not, if you're single and 20 something, it's totally different if you're 45 and have 3 kids.
Yes, it is. And so, I would always support people like stay at a job or get down to 20 hours a week at that job if you can, while you're still growing this other thing. When I started my groups, I did them for a bit, but I was doing bookkeeping as my bread and butter still. Before I was ready to let go of my bookkeeping and jump over and replace that income with just doing small groups over and over and over,
Right. And I think that's something that's hurting like maybe the industry, because everybody's telling you to jump, make your dreams come true, and then they go through very hard times.
Yes.
So it's a good thing to start to do your side hustle, and then when it comes bigger, then you quit your day job.
And I call it a stepping stone. Do your stepping stone job.
Okay.
Whatever that is, my version of bookkeeping, where it wasn't my hustle. It was a solid income that paid for like all the basics, right? It was my bread and butter. It was good. I could do it. And then I had energy on top of it to do other things.
Okay.
Right.
And you mentioned like in your career and your husband's career that there's been many things, freelancing, consulting, jobs. Is there it's like, and you, in your webpage, you call it like Dear Money Adventurers. Can you have that type of adventure and keep growing your financial investments, security, your way to financial freedom? How can you balance like adventurous career but keep growing your personal finances?
Yeah, that's a great question. Everyone's going to answer that different, and I would support everyone depending, again, is there family money? Is there not? How much do you need to be contributing to the household? Do you have a partner that brings in a lot of money? And right, like there's so many. Do you have a partner who has a steady job and has worked for companies for years? If you have that, I'm always like, then obviously nothing's secure, like fully secure. Change happens, things happen, right? But you've been getting a steady paycheck, number one. Number two, the company's probably matching your investments, your retirement contributions, right? And they're just taking it out, right? As a business owner, like all of that stuff is so much harder, right? So me and my husband have been, right, there are times where, right, he worked for a company, then he did his own thing, then he worked for another company, then he did some more consulting, right? And there were times he made more, then I made more. There were times we were both up, and there were times where we were both down. Now, in the background, there's still like, could we buy the home? Which, we didn't, I was 46, he's younger than me. So he was 42, right? When we bought our first home, right?
Wow, my girlfriend right now is 45 and I'm 42. So it's something very, something like
It's
that.
great. It's a good dynamic, right?
Yeah.
It totally worked. And so, it's like, while we've had all those ups and downs and income has gone up and down, we're still trying to make incremental steps, right? In the larger picture. So could we buy a home? Yes. Is it appreciating in value? Yes. We live in Boulder, Colorado in the States. It's gone up a lot. I think it's ridiculous, but it's, it's
Yeah.
on paper, it looks good for us, right? So there's that. Have we been able to slowly tuck away some retirement money? Yes. Are we financially free? No. So are we slowly working on the larger future things? Do we have life insurance in the States? That's huge. That's That's really, really huge if someone dies. And, I've seen many people actually not go into financial ruin because there was life insurance and someone died, right? And so they were able to live on that, right? So I think my son keeps calling me, but it's okay. It's okay. So, that's how we have done it as a couple, is that I want to support him in what excites him, right? And sometimes he needs to stay. Like there was a year or so where he was ready to stop consulting, but people just kept coming to him, and it brought in good money, and it brought in extra money for us. So he stayed doing it, even though he was losing his love for it, right? Or there was another moment where he wanted to move on to something else, and I was like, all right, but please bring in at least this amount each month, and he was able to do that because he loves Kajabi. That's the teaching platform,
Oh, nice.
that I'm on. And all these people were signing up using his link, so I don't use affiliate links, but he does.
Okay.
And he wound up getting a lot of commission that's still coming in and meeting that monthly nut that I'd asked him to contribute while he has the time to explore what's next.
Okay.
So, again, not every year we're going to be earning more, and growth. For me, the ebbs and flow reality is real, and time, energy, money, family, health is real. And so every year we're needing to adjust and tweak our goals and priorities based on that, right? While still chugging along with these larger financial goals. Yeah.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So in getting people prepared, obviously, to read your book, The Art of Money, to order the book, there's something you call the 8 money areas, and the 3 phases that people go through in their money journey. Can you explain them a little bit, so with them a little hint of what they're going to expect in the book?
Sure.
Definitely, like I said before the interview, I wish so much that I had bought the book sooner. It's an amazing book. It's like I've read so many books throughout my lifetime, and this is one of the best books I have ever read, and definitely the best book on money that I have ever read. So thank you very much for writing it.
Thank you. That's a tall, a big, wide compliment. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank
You're-
you.
Thank you.
I hope this book is a classic book that, it's been published for 7 years, right? And then last year we published the companion. So now there's a workbook that goes with it. But I hope that in 10 years, in 20 years, that it's still relatable, right? That it's still relevant. I had a little stack of classic books that weren't money related. A few of them were, but that were relevant 10, 20 years on, right? And that's what I hope for this book. So whenever people have been asking me this, and I'm like, I don't know if I can remember the 8, but I can remember some of them, because again, when you write a book, we wrote this book 8 years ago, right? 9 years ago, right? So things change. My content, even in my program, gets an update every year or so. There's always new ways I'm presenting things or thinking about things. But what you're referring to is that I listed out at the beginning 8 of the ways, or 7 or 8 of the ways, of what people are coming to me for, and then what they'll be working on, or what they want to be working on. So it's kind of the same question. Why are you coming to me? What do you need to be working on? So here's a few of them off the top of my head, in no particular order. Number 1, clarity. Like, people just want clarity on the numbers. They don't. Like, half the people who come to me are terrified of a bookkeeping system, like I was, right? Don't know that some of you can just teach yourselves in one night how to use something. Like my husband just taught himself bookkeeping systems. I needed someone to hold my hand. We would have breaks. I had chocolate breaks. I had crying breaks. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being serious. Okay. So like, that's how, emotional it was for me, challenging it was for me. So a lot of people just want clarity on the numbers. what's coming in, what's going out, what are their cash flow patterns? What is negotiable, what's not? Like, is dining out non-negotiable, but something else is totally they're willing to let go of if they have to choose, and most of us have to choose, right? We have to compromise, right? So clarity. So some of you just want clarity on the numbers, right? Some of you want intimacy with your money relationship. You want to know not just what are the emotions that come up, because you may know what those emotions are and you may go straight into overwhelm, but you want tools on how to be with those emotions, how to name them, sit with them, not go into overwhelm about them, and how to work with them. So you want to understand yourself better, right? With the somatic tools that I teach. And so that's intimacy, okay? Really knowing your strengths, your challenges around money, right? And your money stories and what's working, what's not, all of that, right? Another one is, some of you are coming in because of peace of mind. Like, you don't have it. you don't have the peace of mind and you're wanting to find that. So how do you find peace of mind? Or I could say, how do you find calm? Or go ahead.
It's a good thing to interrupt you with. Many people have a lot of money, like they're totally financially free and still don't have peace of mind.
Yes, and I've worked with those people as well.
Yeah.
I work with people lower income to incredibly wealthy, everywhere in between. And yes, there's people, they don't have peace of mind, but there may be other qualities that they're looking for. They don't feel safe. And so one of the things that I teach is, what is safety? Like, where do you find that? Is that, again, dollars in your bank account? No, because the money's there. There's enough. There's beyond enough, right?
Yes.
So how do you find that from deep within? How do you access safety? I don't know if we can actually fully access security because change happens, right? So, right, but how do we calm ourselves down? How do we find states and moments of calm and safety from within, right?
Yes.
So people come for that. I'll just name a few more. People come for community, right? So but that happens more in my programs, right? Because everyone comes in, they support each other. People are coming in for support. I don't even know if these are the right ones, but they're coming. Go ahead, you tell me.
It's interesting you talk about community, because I live in Dominican Republic. It's a small country. Like, usually I thought that only people in big countries like in the US or in Europe or wherever felt alone. But here in my country, I feel that there's a lot of people lacking or wanting to be in communities, to be connected, that they feel alone. So in your growth journey, sometimes you feel alone, and it's great to have a community where you're growing together on the topic that you choose, that in this case, it's about money.
Yeah. And I think how it happens in the book is that I don't just tell my own money stories, of how I'm doing money with my husband or my teenager or my own stuff. I tell a lot of stories of people in the community that have taken the program and done the work, and I tell their stories. It's all anonymous and I got permission,
Yeah.
And so those are some of the things. I think the biggest thing in the book is that I take you through the 3 phases: money healing, money practices, and money maps. And there's teachings and tools and practices in each of those areas. And so it's inviting you to start practicing these new tools. It's giving you lots of new ways to think about money and have a relationship with money and interact with money, lots of new concepts. And I don't read nonfiction. So I read memoirs and novels. So the book had to be filled with storytelling.
Yeah.
Because that's what's so important to me. I love the tools, I love the practices, but I love the stories. I don't think I told that many stories during our time together, but the book is filled with stories like a memoir, or not like fiction, but more like a memoir. And that's so important to me, to teach through storytelling.
And that's the way we learn. Like that's what's been going on in the history of the world. Storytelling, that's how we've been learning, and we've been modeling other people and our mentors. So like I said, it's an amazing book. I urge people to go buy it right now. Everywhere. I think it's in Amazon and in many other places, and it's gonna take you definitely through a real healing money journey. That takes me to the last couple of questions. Like when we say heal, there's a lot of experts that ask you to go back, like to when you were 7 years old, to when you're 9 years old, some early memory. But in your experience, or it's been, at least for me, it's been hard to recall stuff from my early childhood, and I sometimes I say to myself, oh my God, like I'm not gonna reach another level of healing because I cannot remember what the heck happened before. How do I get through that? How do people get through that, or is it actually necessary to go through it?
Great question. There's no one way to heal. There's no one way. There's no right way, right? I say the same things over and over, right? So it can be applied in so many different ways. There's no one way. There's no right way. So as a trained therapist, yes, you know, we do go back a bit to try to pick up some of those pieces to see if there are any money memories. Some of us remember a lot, some of us don't remember, some of us remember a little, right? I used to remember my mom paying bills at the dining room table and she was really stressed out. I remember my parents fighting sometimes about money. Like we might just have little blips of images like that. We may not get the whole scenario or picture. That's okay. I think, you know, I do encourage people. There's questions in my first book and my second book, you know, about going back and asking some questions. But again, if nothing comes up, then you move on to the next journaling question and it's okay. You know, there's nothing wrong or right about it. It's like, is this bringing something up? Is it not? And, you know, even the story I told about my siblings that, you know, I went back and was like, oh, wow, I was the identified spender like my dad, but that got a bad rap. Like I felt like something was wrong with me, you know, and I wasn't necessarily overspending, but compared to them, I was, you know, my siblings. So that gave me information about how I was formed. So I think it is good to go back a little bit. We don't need to stay there forever, to go pick up some of the pieces, to see what we remember. Do we remember, you know, when we were growing up, were there kids who had more money or less money than us? And how did we feel? And what were our grandparents' stories around money? You know, did they ever give us money? You know, what was our first job? Were we able to keep that money, or did we have to bring it back to the family to contribute? There's all these little things, you know, these questions that I ask. So again, you don't like have to answer every single one to do it right. There's no right or grade. You go back a bit because you're wanting to understand both like how you were formed and shaped. And it's based on environment, family, but it's also based on personality, like just what you uniquely came in with, right? And how you're reacting, responding, or rebelling with your environment, right? But so it's good to know, like, when did we make declarations? You know, I made a declaration as a teenager or 20 something year olds, like, I'm not taking money from my father anymore. You know, I'm going to make my own money. I'm not going to marry a man. I did eventually, you know, at 35, but it was later. And just, I made all these things in reaction against him, you know, or our dynamic, which was a lot of power and control stuff. And then so in my 20s, it was now it's time to start unraveling this and finding my own relationship with money and what I want and don't want. And, you know, so there's that. But healing is all these little incremental things. And, you know, as even when I wrote the book, there were that chapter where I mentioned my father at one point about the power stuff, that really surprised me, you know. And just last year, I learned new things. Like every year, you're learning new things about your relationship to money, which is a form of healing, you know, bringing awareness and understanding to things and moving that into change. So healing for me, ongoing, you know, it's not like really you're going to wake up one day, know your whole story, never have any money emotions anymore, be
And
done.
be financially free. And
Totally.
be done.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
It's
Yeah.
like when you say in your book, there's a very fine line when you need to ask yourself if you need more healing or you just need to take more action and sit with the uncomfortable and just be done with it.
Well, or put it on pause,
Or
right?
put it on-
Because
okay.
right when I go money healing, the money practices, money maps, it doesn't mean you're done with money healing and then you move on to money practices. You bring everything you learn in money healing and the tools to your money practices. When you're sitting down to do a money date, you do a body check-in. You bring all of that, what you learned and the tools and the practices. And most people I know, when they've done some healing work, they're way more ready to have a money date. They're way more ready to sit in a financial planner's office. And when they notice that they're starting to glaze over and like, what are you saying? I don't understand. Or look at a report. I don't understand what this says. You can go 1 second, body check in, or 1 moment, I'm going to go to the bathroom and take a break, take a breather. And then I'm going to come back and go, oh, now let me ask you some questions, so they all build on each other, right? And it's an ongoing unfolding. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you very for an amazing conversation, an amazing interview. So if I may ask the last question, people that are starting their money journey or they've been trying to do their money journey and they've gone through ups and downs and they've made a lot of mistakes, what is your best recommendation that where do they start so they can for real like grab this topic by the horns and start a real life-changing journey?
So 1, read my book, just read the book.
Obviously, yes.
Read the book and see what are you missing, because we all have certain things in place and then there's all holes or blind spots or things to add in. So you may realize a body check-in is really important to start bringing more mindfulness to your choices and your decisions, right? Because you are overspending and that's an issue. Like everyone's going to come in at different points and end at different points. So I can't really map that out, right? But I'm giving you the whole terrain and foundation in the book. These are all the different places to go, right? And, some people really the body check-in may be the first thing. If you're not doing it, do it. Like start bringing more awareness in, right? Other people like already have a bookkeeping system in place. That's not their issue. They know their numbers. They know their it's it could be a shift of I'm in a cash flow dip and I don't know what to do, and I'm going to list out 5 things of something I can offer to get me through a cash flow dip, right? So I'm kind of I can give you hundreds of scenarios, right? So let's come back. I'd say go through the book, learn the foundation, identify what parts are easy for you, what's missing for you, but if you aren't doing body check-ins or something like it, do it. If you aren't bringing a set of questions to your money decisions, add it in. If you don't know your numbers, do that. If you, need someone on your financial support team to metaphorically hold your hand, get that. Now, I just mentioned like 5 steps, right? We can only do one at a time. So people come to me, and we'll end with this. Okay, I have a private session. I'm terrible with money. I'm awful. Okay, by the end of the call, we've identified at least 5 things that they do well about money. At least 5, if not more. Everyone comes in. So it's not like everything's a mess. I mean, if you're, sometimes we're in a really tough place, right? But there are some things that you do well, that you have in place, that you can build upon. And again, it doesn't mean we're never going to make a mistake or hit a hard spot or go into a dip. In my world, you are, right? It's feel
And
all
I
your
think in mine
feelings.
too.
Okay. It's feel
Yes.
all your feelings, give yourself the day, whatever it is, and then come back in and what is one step I can take. So list out the 5 things you do well around money. It could be, I'm a high earner. It could, right? I worked with someone who just is, earning's not her issue. So what's her issue? Still going into debt, still overspending, not looking at her numbers, right?
Mhm.
Under earners may be not able to say no. They say yes to everything. Here's my time, here's my energy, here's my right? I'm totally generalizing. But list out 5 things that you do well. I'm a good tipper. I love giving gifts. I raised my son as a single mom into his 20s. He's a really good man. We have 5 things. I'm really good at bookkeeping. I went in and bought a car by myself recently. These are not my, right?
Mhm.
List out things that you do well. Number 1. Number 2, start adding in some of these other tools that we've talked about. Body check-in, money dates, looking at your numbers, right?
Yes.
So this is all just personal finance. That could be a whole other thing about
Yeah.
business. Right? Yeah.
That's a topic for another interview.
Sounds
So
good.
thank
Sounds
you.
good.
Thank you so much for this amazing opportunity to have this conversation with you. I'm sure everybody here in Dominican Republic and hopefully in Latin America will get to see this, and we get to spread some money healing information and knowledge because I know it's very much needed in the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.